In this video, I'm going to share with you the exact sales call script that I used to close my first clients at $2,700 and $5,400. When I first started my web design business as a quiet introvert who is terrible at small talk, I was sweating just at the thought of getting on a call with a stranger to try and pitch them my services. Going into the call with a plan and a script to follow made me feel 100 times more confident and helped me avoid any of those awkward silences. Now, this is not going to be a guide to cold calling. I do not recommend that you do that. This is what to do when someone reaches out to you, they're already interested in your services, and you're getting on a call with them to see if you're a good fit to work together. I've seen a lot of content online of people filming themselves holding these sales calls, clearly reading from a script, and they just repeat the same icky sales lines over and over again like a robot. This is not what we're going to be doing here today. The best sales calls feel like genuine conversations where you connect with your client and you get off the phone feeling great. If you do it right, you can easily book higher budget clients who are excited to work with you without using any of the pushy sales tactics that make people feel pressured into saying yes. And so you can download the exact sales script that I'm using in the description below. But in this video, I'm going to take you through the 5 phases to holding a successful sales call so you actually understand how to guide the conversation to get someone ready to work with you, and you're not always relying on this script. Even when it comes to the more tricky conversations like talking budget and prices, towards the end of this video, we're going to go through exactly how to pitch your services and confidently handle any price objections. And so the first phase of a sales call is by far the most important. If you skip this phase, you have already lost the client within 5 minutes of getting on a call with them. The number one mistake that most people make going into this is thinking that they need to be the one doing all the talking. Especially if you're newer to these types of conversations, you might think that the goal of this call is to impress your client. And so you start talking about your skills and all the benefits of your services and how it can help them. But if you start by talking too much about yourself and pitching too soon before the client feels like you've really heard and fully understood what they need, then you've already lost that client. Yes, you want to be the one guiding the conversation, but you don't need to do everything or do all the talking. Your job is simply to ask the right questions. So phase 1 is gather information. Going into a call, you can start with a little small talk, ask where they're calling from, get comfortable with each other. But the thing you want to avoid is letting the client lead that conversation. Often when a client reaches out to you for your services, they'll feel like they want to jump in and just tell you exactly what they need from you. And so as soon as possible, you want to take control of the conversation and let them know exactly how this is going to go. So to set the tone, the first thing I say going into these conversations is, if it's okay with you, I'm just going to ask you a few questions so I can understand as much as possible about your business and the goals for this project. And then at the end of the call, if I think that we're a good fit to work together, we can talk about exactly what that would look like. Then when the client agrees, you just want to start the conversation with genuine curiosity, finding out as much as you can about their business. Asking questions like, tell me what your business looks like now, where do you hope to be 1, 3, or 5 years from now, what is your biggest selling product or service, how much is that bringing in for you right now, and do you have any new services or products in the works? While you're asking these questions and finding out more about this client, this is when we move into phase 2. In phase 2, we are looking for very specific information, because when you have this information, it makes it 10 times easier to pitch your services and get an easy yes from clients. What most people don't really understand about sales calls is that it's not about saying whatever you can to make the sale. It's actually just about having a conversation to figure out if working together is going to be the right fit for both of you. If your service is actually going to help your client get what they want. A client might come to you saying, for example, I need a website, but what they're really saying is, I need more sales, or I want to attract more higher budget clients. And so your goal is to uncover the real motivations behind why a client is coming to you. When you understand a client's goals and long-term vision, it makes it so much easier to pitch your services, because you can just repeat these goals back to your client to make a far more compelling pitch. And so in this phase, you want to ask questions like, what does success look like for this project? What specific results are you hoping to achieve? And how will this project impact your business in the long run? These questions not only help you work out the scope of this project so you can tailor your services to meet their specific needs, but it also shows that you care about getting them real results from working with you. You care about them getting a return on their investment. And so then when it comes to pitching your services, you can say, here's what I think will actually get you the specific results that you're looking for. This approach not only positions you as an expert and builds trust with your client, but you're no longer making the hard sell, trying to convince them to say yes to something that they don't actually need. You're just sharing with them what you think is going to help them get the best result. But there is one last missing piece, and without this, you won't know how you are actually going to help your client get the results that they are hoping for, which leads us to probably the most powerful part of your sales call. Phase 3, identify obstacles. And so once you found out exactly what your client is hoping to achieve by working with you, your next goal is to find out what is currently standing in the way of them getting there. What problems are they currently struggling with? Doing this does 3 very important things. 1, it creates an emotional investment. Saying their problems out loud immediately makes someone more invested in finding a solution for their problems. So they're almost convincing themselves that they really need to work with you. The second thing it does is demonstrate the value of your services. It shows your client the gap between where they are now and where they want to be, and it increases the perceived value of your service. It makes your services feel like a great investment compared to the cost of inaction or continuing to struggle with these problems that they're facing. The last thing it does is position you as an expert. Understanding their pain points allows you to position your services as the solution that they've been looking for. It shifts the dynamic from being sold to being helped. And so in this phase, you want to ask questions like, what would you say is the biggest hurdle in the way of reaching your goals? How do you feel about your current website, brand, business right now? What has been your biggest frustration with your current setup? What have you tried before that didn't work as well as you hoped? Or if you could wave a magic wand and fix one thing about your current situation, what would it be? These questions completely transform a conversation to, do you want to buy what I'm selling? To, I understand exactly why you're struggling and I know how to fix it. And so at this point, you're ready to move into phase 4, the pitch. This is the moment that everybody dreads. I remember being on a sales call, feeling my heart race as it got to the moment where I had to pitch my services. I still get a little nervous even now, but if you cannot confidently talk about your services and talk about money, then your client won't be confident investing with you. How you talk about your services and pricing directly impacts how your client perceives the value of your work. And if you do it wrong, then you are leaving a lot of money on the table. The important thing to understand going into this is that pricing is completely subjective. What feels like a lot of money to you might not be a lot of money to your client at all. I remember being nervous to charge even $500 for a website because that felt like a huge amount of money to me at the time. But then just a few months later, I was pitching a website project at $5,000 and the client in front of me didn't even bat an eyelid. They just sat there and said, sounds great. They actually admitted to me at the end of the project that $5,000 felt like a bargain to them because of the scale of their business and the projects that they were used to working on. And so if I had gone into this conversation pitching a website at $500, this would have given me away as a complete amateur. This client would have looked at me and thought, I am looking for a professional and this just isn't the scale of project that I'm looking for to grow my business. So before you just jump in and start pitching your services, you have to actually gauge exactly where your client is at. And there are 3 steps to this. Step 1 is talking about money right from the beginning of the call. Now, you might not have even realized that we were doing this, but if you looked back at the questions that we asked at the beginning of the call, questions like, what is your biggest selling service or product, and how much is this bringing in for you right now? This is already starting to give you an idea of your client's revenue and the scale of their business. So step 2 is directly asking for their budget. Before you pitch your services, you want to start by asking, what is your investment budget for this project? Using this exact wording frames your services as an investment rather than an expense. And then depending on their answer to this question, you can then make your pitch. So based on everything you've learned about their business, goals, and budget, you can now confidently pitch your services as the solution that they are looking for. And so here's how I structure my pitch. Based on everything we've discussed, I think my package would be the perfect fit for you. This includes these deliverables, which will help you to solve your specific goals and pain points. The investment for this package is state your price. At this point, this is very important, stop talking. After stating your price, you want to resist the urge to justify it or keep talking. The silence might feel uncomfortable to you, but it gives your clients space to process the information and for you to gauge their response. So there are 3 common responses from clients in this situation. The ideal scenario is that your client's expectations align perfectly with your pitch, and they'll simply say, that sounds good, and ask about the next steps. If you've done your job well, made them feel heard, and built a good connection over this call, this is often the most common response. But it's not always the case. So scenario number 2 is that their budget is slightly lower than your rate. So for example, you pitch 6,000 to 7,000 and their budget is 4,000 to 5,000. In this case, I usually respond with something like, I completely understand. Let me take this into consideration when I'm putting together your proposal. And then in the proposal that you send over to them after the call, you can give them two options. One being the full package, and then a second option that removes some of the deliverables to fit into their budget. The thing you really want to avoid is completely backtracking on your rates to match the client's budget, especially if their budget is way off. For example, if you pitch 6,000 to 7,000 and they say 2,000 to 3,000, in this case, you have two choices. You can either offer a significantly reduced package that fits their budget, or you can politely let them know that this is just not going to be a good fit. If you want a guide on how to word this, then you can find the exact responses that I use depending on a client's situation in the sales script below. But in this moment, it can sometimes feel like you want to do anything that you can to secure this client. But it's often better to walk away from a project than to undervalue your work and then resent it later. The right clients will value your expertise and be willing to invest. And the ones who don't value your work enough to invest are often the nightmare clients that you really don't want to work with anyway. Those clients who don't value your work are often the ones that say things like, this person over here said that they could do it cheaper. In this case, I just confidently respond and say, every service provider is different, but this is what I believe is going to get you the best results for your project. These are not always the easiest conversations to have, but the more you practice them, the more confident you become. At the end of the day, pricing really isn't personal. This is just business, but it can definitely feel very personal in the moment. I still feel uncomfortable every time I'm pitching a new quote that is more than I've ever charged before, but it becomes a lot easier the more confident you are in the value of your work, the more successful projects you have, and the more yeses you get from clients on calls like this. But the most important thing to remember, that even if you get a clear yes on the call, is that there's still the possibility that you get off the phone and never hear from this client again. This has definitely happened to me before, and so once you have a yes from a client, there is one last step that you cannot miss if you want to give yourself the best chance of actually securing this project. As soon as you get off the call, you want to immediately send over a project proposal, recapping everything you talked about, their goals and challenges, while clearly outlining your service deliverables, pricing, timeline, and the exact next steps to get started. It's important that you make this as easy as possible for them to say yes and get started right away, so you keep the momentum going while the client is still excited from talking to you. If you want to see exactly how I put this together and send over this proposal, then you can check out my client process video here.